في ربوع المجد كنا نرفع النصر المبين ونعيد الحق إن عبد رب العالمين.
The state can only support science. That's the only neutral, what they claim, position to have. The government, for example, if it wants to put in place a certain policy or certain law, for example, government wants to ban the burning of trash. You have trash and you want to get rid of your trash. You decide to burn it. The government says, no, you cannot do this. Now the government justifies this ban on you burning your trash by saying that, well, this is going to pollute the air. It's going to reduce the air quality, and therefore this is why we're banning it. That causes harm to other people. It infringes on their rights. It infringes on their freedoms because the air quality is going to go down if everyone burns their trash. Therefore, we're banning the burning of trash. This is a secular law and it has a secular justification. It's a scientific materialist justification. What if the government says, yeah, you can't burn trash because the smoke is going to disturb the sky god. It is going to disturb the gods of the sky, for example, or it's going to disturb Zeus. Then this would not be a secular justification for that law, and it would be rejected as being non-secular. So this is the difference. The government can only appeal to scientific reasons, purportedly scientific reasons, and this overall materialist paradigm. But is this true neutrality? Is this really neutral when you only are appealing to a scientific paradigm? So for example, are secular schools really neutral about religion? The claim is, yeah, well, secular schools, like public schools, public universities, they're state funded. They have to maintain neutrality. They cannot prefer a certain kind of religion or a certain kind of perspective. You have to be neutral. But the reality is that schools are teaching this fundamental idea that truth is established via scientific methods, such as empiricism, mathematical analysis, mathematical deduction. Truth is established through science. This is what schools teach. This is what children are learning in public schools. This is what children are learning as they get into high school and then ultimately college. This is what is considered neutrality. Truth is established via scientific method. But the reality is that religious claims are not empirical in nature. Religious claims about God, about the afterlife, religious claims about certain moral values, those are not empirical in nature. It's a different category of truths, different category of facts. They're not empirical facts. They're religious facts or moral facts or fact claims, factual claims, you could call them. So schools are undermining religion because they're teaching that, well, truth, whatever is true, has to be scientific and established on the basis of science. But guess what? Most of religion is not that kind of claim. So schools, these bastions of neutrality, are implicitly undermining religion while they claim to be neutral. And this is the kind of impact that schooling has. So is it a surprise, really, that so many people who go through a school system and then go to college, they end up becoming atheists, or they end up leaving organized religion and instead adopting this kind of abstract idea of, well, you know, maybe there's a God or maybe there's a higher power, but obviously religions are just bogus. Is this really surprising? No, because throughout the school system and throughout one's education, you're being taught that truth is scientific. The only objective truth is scientific truth. Everything else is just opinion, the opinions of different people. This is often taught to elementary school children very early on, the fact opinion distinction, but they're making a mistake with that kind of claim. And I constantly have to teach our youth or unteach them this kind of idea, because they'll say, oh, well, believing in Allah, the claim that Allah exists, that's an opinion. That's not objective. And I have to explain to them, no, it's a factual claim. The fact that Allah exists, the fact that Islam is true, the fact that it is wrong to fornicate or to drink alcohol or do drugs, like these are factual claims. There are moral factual claims. And then there is different ways to adjudicate. There's different ways to determine whether a claim is true or false. And science is not the only way to do that. There are other methods of determining truth, but schools will only teach you that truth is established via scientific method. So this is not neutral at all. This is very corrosive to faith, any type of faith, not just Islamic faith. So it's not a surprise when atheists will say that, oh, well, the more educated you are, the more likely it is that you're an atheist. Well, that's not really surprising. It's not like because atheism is more rational, or atheism is something that appeals to a more educated mind. It has to do with the nature of that education that you're getting for over 16 or 18 years. So this is false neutrality, not true neutrality. Also, the legal system. Is there true neutrality in the legal system? When you have any law, you're going to presuppose a worldview or a paradigm, because all laws require certain assumptions about the way the world works, certain assumptions about what's right or wrong, certain assumptions about the nature of a human being. All of those assumptions or presuppositions are baked into your worldview or your paradigm. Even in secular countries and theocratic countries and Christian countries and Jewish countries, you have those kinds of presuppositions, and the law is going to be based off of that. What the liberal would say is that, well, Muslim countries, all the laws are based on Islam, this Islamic paradigm or the Islamic worldview, and that's being imposed on people who don't accept that belief system. They don't accept that worldview. So this is unjust. You're coercive. You are coercing people because you're establishing laws and imposing laws on the basis of beliefs that not everyone has. Well, the same can be said about all of these liberal countries, all of these liberal democracies. They are basing their legal system on a scientific materialist paradigm that not everyone accepts. Muslims do not accept a scientific liberal paradigm, but the laws that are being imposed that we are abiding by are based on that liberal scientific materialist paradigm. So how is that any different? That's also imposition. That's also coercion then. How can this be true neutrality? It's the facade of neutrality. You're pretending like you're neutral, and Islam is not neutral, but in reality, you're not any more non-partisan. Liberal democracy is not any less non-partisan than Islamic system of government or other authoritarian types of government. So that was secularism. Now let's talk about political correctness. Liberalism promotes science selectively because it also has to accommodate liberal morality, which, as we discussed, means maximizing freedom and equality. So this is the lie, basically, because liberalism claims, and their governments claim, that we're going to only be abiding by scientific materialism because that's the only true paradigm, the only true worldview that's objective, that everyone can agree to, they claim. So it's the only true neutral worldview to appeal to as a system for establishing laws, deriving laws and policy. But in reality, liberalism is very selective and unscientific in certain respects because it has to accommodate liberal morality. So imagine the science. There are scientific studies that establish that people are happier and healthier without premarital sex. Okay, you have the science there. It's established scientifically. Therefore, you have to have laws against premarital sex. You have to ban it. You have to criminalize it. You have to punish people who engage in it. Well, because of the science. The science says that people are happier and healthier when they don't engage in this type of behavior. Is the liberal democracy going to put down that law on the basis of science? Is the liberal democracy going to prohibit fornication on the basis of that science? No, it's not going to establish that kind of law because that violates sexual freedom. It is politically incorrect to go against this kind of freedom of an individual to engage in all kinds of sexual behaviors, as long as they're consensual, of course. So the science says one thing, but you have to accommodate this liberal morality, which is trying to maximize individual freedom, maximize sexual liberty, and etc. So the liberal governments are not going to just operate on the basis of scientific consensus. And this is something that we can understand theoretically, that this is the case. And we can, if we wanted to do a history of science or a history of Western governments, liberal governments, something that we could see and decipher, like that this is happening, that this type of rejection of science when it contradicts liberal norms, we can see that that's happening when we look at history. But we don't even have to do that because liberal institutions, scientific institutions, admit that they're doing this. They admit that they will disregard science if it contradicts liberal norms. So this is a paper that was published in Nature. Nature is one of the top science journals in the world. In 2022, they published this article. The title is "Science Must Respect the Dignity and Rights of All Humans." So you just see that title and you think, well, who is defining what dignity and rights of all humans mean? Like, who is deciding that? Basic summary is that they say peer-reviewed science must align with liberal norms. We're not going to publish, and no one should publish, articles or research that conflict with liberal norms. They say that people can be harmed indirectly. For example, research may inadvertently stigmatize individuals or human groups. It may be discriminatory, racist, sexist, ableist, or homophobic. It may provide justification for undermining the human rights of specific groups simply because of their social characteristics. Like if research is doing this inadvertently, forget about like deliberately, but even inadvertently, if research is implying a conclusion that is racist or sexist or ableist or homophobic or otherwise discriminatory, then this is very harmful. It's undermining the human rights of different groups. In creating this guidance, we took as a starting point the first article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Humans are free and equal in dignity and rights. We drew on the several covenants and conventions of the United Nations. So here they're admitting that their guidelines in determining what can be published as science, it really depends on this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is a ultra liberal document, philosophically liberal document. And the idea that people are free and equal, freedom and equality, maximizing freedom and equality in accordance with the United Nations, liberal power. So this is a shocking admission. Then they say there's a fine balance between academic freedom and protection of the dignity and rights of individual and human groups. So sometimes the research is in violation of the dignity and rights of others, therefore we can't publish it. It doesn't matter how good the research, it doesn't matter how much evidence there is to support that position. Sorry, we're not going to publish that. We can't consider that to be acceptable academic research. So researchers are encouraged to promote equality between men and women in their academic research, which by its nature should be grounded on the recognition of merit, competences, and creativity, regardless of any other personal attributes or orientation. Sexist, misogynistic, and or anti-LGBTQ plus content is ethically objectionable, regardless of content type, whether it's a research or review or opinion, and for research, regardless of whether a research project was reviewed and approved by appropriate ethics specialists, editors may raise with the authors concerns regarding potentially sexist, misogynistic, and or anti-LGBTQ plus assumptions, implications, or speech in their submission. Engage in external ethics experts to provide input on such issues as part of the peer review process, or request modifications to or correct or otherwise amend post-publication, and in severe cases refuse publication of or retract post-publication sexist, misogynistic, and or anti-LGBTQ plus content using the guiding criteria 1 through 4 in the section above. So they're saying explicitly you have to maintain a certain understanding of equality. Sexes are equal, all groups are equal. You cannot publish anything that contradicts that. You can't publish anything that's considered sexist, misogynistic, homophobic. This is not going to be tolerated. And you have to actually strive in your research to support those values, support those norms of equality. This is how a value system is going to dictate the science. And what liberals end up doing, they will claim that, well, liberalism is justified on the basis of science. So it's very circular. If you only allow liberal views to be published as official science, then yeah, not surprisingly, your liberalism is going to be the only kind of worldview or paradigm that is supported by the science. This is circular reasoning.